You know, if you really stop and think about it for a second, you and I are living in a reality that would just absolutely short-circuit the minds of our ancestors.
Oh, without a doubt. It would break their brains.
Literally break them. I mean,
Yeah.
we possess a level of material wealth and technology, plus this pure on-demand entertainment right at our fingertips that any Roman emperor or like medieval king could have never, ever dreamed of in their wildest fantasies.
Yeah, they couldn't even conceptualize it.
Right. Think about the Palace of Versailles for a second. You look at the Sun King, Louis XIV. He's arguably one of the most powerful and opulent monarchs in all of human history.
Right, the guy was the definition of luxury.
Exactly. The man lived in unimaginable luxury for his time, but his massive palace had virtually no plumbing.
I mean, he was probably freezing half the winter, too.
Exactly. He was cold, he had no real medicine, and yet today, almost any one of us can sit in a perfectly climate-controlled room, pull out a piece of glass from our pocket, and order a meal from across the globe to be delivered to our door in 30 minutes.
And while you wait for that food, you can turn on a massive flat-screen TV and watch literally thousands of different movies the second you feel even slightly bored.
Yeah, we are absolutely drowning in luxury, but here is the kicker.
Lay it on me.
Despite all this incredible, unprecedented comfort, why are so many of us plagued by this lingering, heavy sense of anxiety?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. Why does modern life so often feel like this endless, exhausting treadmill of unfulfilled expectations? I mean, you get the promotion, you buy the car, you get the house, and like 3 weeks later, you're right back to feeling completely empty.
It's a universal feeling these days.
It is. So welcome to this deep dive for the channel, Decode Deep Dive. I'm so glad you're here with us today. We are on a serious mission to unpack the secrets of a truly satisfying life.
And we have some incredible source material to help us do that.
We do. We are decoding a monumental, groundbreaking piece of literature today. We're looking at Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's book, Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience.
And we should probably set some expectations right out of the gate for you listening today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's manage those expectations.
Because this deep dive is absolutely not going to offer you cheap, how-to life hacks. We aren't going to give you a list of 5 morning routines to make you a millionaire by 30.
Or tell you to just drink more water and think positive thoughts.
Right, none of that toxic positivity stuff. Instead, we are going to do something much more profound. We are going to actually deconstruct the biological and psychological anatomy of human consciousness.
Which sounds heavy, but it is so fascinating.
It is. We are going to define the exact precise mechanics of enjoyment and reveal how you can transform your mundane routines, your bitter adversities, and ultimately your entire life into one unified, optimal experience.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how to achieve this state of optimal experience, we first have to figure out why our baseline experience as modern humans is so often flawed.
Yeah, we have to look at the disease before the cure.
Right. Why does our default pursuit of happiness just flat out fail most of the time? I mean, we all grow up conditioned by society, by advertising, by our peers, to believe that happiness is a destination.
We treat it like a place on a map.
Exactly. We think that if we just get the bigger house or the better job, the faster car, maybe the perfect partner, we will finally cross this invisible finish line and arrive at happiness. But it never seems to work out that way, does it?
It rarely ever does. And the author addresses this right at the beginning of the text. He calls it the paradox of rising expectations.
The paradox of rising expectations. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it's essentially a psychological mirage. The data shows that as our general level of wealth and comfort increases, the sense of well-being we actually hope to achieve keeps receding further into the distance.
Like chasing the horizon.
Exactly like that. Think about it evolutionarily, right? When basic survival is your primary goal, just securing food and shelter for the night is enough to provide a massive sense of relief and satisfaction.
Right. If you're starving, a bowl of rice is the greatest thing in the world.
But once those basic survival needs are met securely, new desires immediately arise. Your baseline shifts. You are no longer satisfied with just a roof over your head.
Now you want a nicer roof.
Right, you want a nicer roof in a better neighborhood with better schools. And this endless shifting of the goalposts ties into a much deeper, much more structural issue that the author calls ontological anxiety.
Ontological anxiety. Wow, that sounds incredibly heavy.
It is pretty heavy.
What exactly is that in a practical sense?
Well, It is essentially the existential dread, the underlying fear of being that arises when the traditional shields of culture break down.
Shields of culture.
Yeah. Throughout history, for centuries, human beings used immense collective cultural narratives to shield themselves from the sheer randomness and brutality of the universe.
Oh, like religion and myths.
Exactly. We use sweeping myths, dominant religions, fierce patriotism, and even really rigid social class habits.
Mm.
These cultural shields acted as a buffer.
A buffer against the chaos.
Yes, they told us that we were important, that we mattered, that there was a grand plan, and that we were situated right at the center of the cosmos.
Right, so if a crop failed or a plague hit your village, you didn't have to carry the existential weight of it all by yourself.
You didn't have to think the universe was just randomly out to get you.
Yeah, you could say, well, it's the will of the gods, or it's a test of my faith. It provided a framework so the chaos didn't just completely break your mind.
Precisely. But in our modern era, as scientific rationality has grown, and as globalization has shown us thousands of competing ways of living, those traditional shields have worn very thin for a lot of people.
Science kind of peeled back the curtain.
It did. The objective truths of science have, for many, stripped away the comforting safety nets of myth. And when you strip away those safety nets, you are left completely exposed to the harsh, indifferent winds of chaos.
Which is terrifying.
It is. You look in the mirror one morning, you see your first gray hair, you realize your time on Earth is finite, and that terrifying, quiet question creeps in.
Is this all there is?
Yes, is this all there is? That is ontological anxiety. It's the sudden realization that the universe doesn't actually care about you.
Wow. Okay, so when people hit that wall, when they feel that anxiety, they usually default to thinking that happiness is just a random stroke of luck, right?
The usual coping mechanism.
Yeah, like we treat happiness the exact same way we treat the weather. We wake up and go, well, I hope it's a happy day today.
Or we think if the stars align or if we win the lottery, then boom, we are magically endowed with happiness forever.
And what's fascinating here is that the author completely shatters that illusion, like completely tears it down.
He really does. The core thesis of this entire work rests on a very blunt truth. And that truth is that the universe was absolutely not designed for human comfort.
It's totally indifferent.
Entirely indifferent to our needs, our desires, and our pain. Therefore, happiness is not something that just happens to us. It is not a cosmic gift.
You can't just wait around for it.
Right. It cannot be bought with a lottery win. And it cannot be commanded by military or political power. Happiness is a condition that must be prepared for, cultivated, and defended privately by each individual person.
It has to be defended. I love that phrasing.
It is an active state of being, not just a passive reception of good luck.
You know, it almost sounds like we're going about it completely backward.
How do you mean?
Well, trying to chase happiness directly is sort of like trying to catch a butterfly in a wide open field.
Well, that's a great analogy.
Right. If you run around frantically chasing the butterfly, swinging a net, it just frantically flies away from you. You exhaust yourself and you end up with nothing.
Just sweating in an empty field.
Exactly. But if you stop chasing it and instead take the time to tend to your own garden, like if you cultivate the soil, plant the right flowers, and pull the weeds, eventually the butterfly just comes and sits right on your shoulder.
That is a phenomenal way to put it.
In this context, that garden we need to tend to is our own inner experience, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it aligns perfectly with the philosophies cited in the text. In fact, the author actually quotes the great psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl.
Oh, I love Frankl's work.
Yeah, he wrote extensively about meaning. And Frankl said, don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it.
Because you're focused on the outcome, not the process.
Exactly. He said that success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only ensues as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a course greater than oneself.
That is so powerful. Unintended side effect.
And the philosopher John Stuart Mill made a very similar point too. He argued that the very moment you pause to ask yourself if you are happy, you cease to be so.
Wait, really? Just asking the question ruins it?
Yeah, because the act of questioning it pulls you out of the actual experience of it. You become an observer instead of a participant.
So if happiness is this delicate condition that we have to cultivate internally in our quote-unquote garden, we really need to understand how the soil works.
We need to know what we're planting in.
Right. We need to understand how the machinery of our mind actually functions to allow for that cultivation.
We do. And that means we have to look very closely at the concept of consciousness itself.
Okay, let's get into consciousness. How does the book define it?
According to the book, consciousness is essentially a clearinghouse for sensations, feelings, and ideas. It is, by definition, intentionally ordered information.
And intentionally ordered.
Yes. Think of it this way. A plant or a single-celled organism reacts to its environment through pure automated instinct. It doesn't choose.
It just reacts to the sun or the water.
Right. But human consciousness allows us to intercept those instincts. We can take what our senses tell us, weigh the information, evaluate it against our past memories and future goals, and then actively decide how to act.
It gives us agency. It makes us human.
It does. But here's the critical part that most people completely ignore, and this is huge.
What's that?
Consciousness has hard biological limits. It is absolutely not infinite.
Yeah, the numbers the book brings up on this are just absolutely staggering. I mean, we like to think of our brains as these limitless supercomputers.
We flatter ourselves.
We really do. But the human mind can actually only process about 126 bits of information per second.
Which is a tiny bottleneck if you think about how much data is in the world.
It's minuscule, and when you extrapolate that out over a 70-year lifetime, counting only waking hours, that translates to a hard cap of about 185 billion bits of information.
For an entire lifetime.
Yes, that is your entire life. Just 185 billion bits.
Which, to some listening right now, might initially sound like a massive number. I mean, a billion of anything sounds huge.
It does sound big at first.
Right. It sounds infinite until you realize how incredibly fast you spend that currency every single second of the day.
Exactly. The book points out that just processing language, like if you are listening to me speak right now and actively understanding my words, that takes about 40 bits of information per second.
That's a third of your total processing power just gone.
Yes, which mathematically explains something so common. That is why you literally cannot truly understand 3 people talking to you at the exact same time.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. 3 people talking would demand 120 bits per second, which pushes right up against your 126-bit limit.
You'd be maxed out.
You would have no processing power left to notice the temperature of the room or read their body language or even formulate a reply. You have to block out almost all other sensory input just to keep up with the words.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the implications of that bottleneck are profound.
How so?
Well, it means that every single thought you have, every memory you recall, every feeling of joy or sting of regret you experience, all of it has to be drawn from that finite bank of 185 billion bits.
You can't just manufacture more space.
No, you cannot buy more. You cannot borrow more from tomorrow. The information we actively allow into our consciousness bit by bit literally determines the actual content and quality of our lives.
So what decides what gets in?
The specific tool we use to select which information gets in and which gets blocked out is attention.
Attention. So attention is sort of like the bouncer at the door of the club of your mind.
That is exactly what it is. And attention is what the author calls psychic energy.
Psychic energy. I like that term.
Yeah, because without it, absolutely no mental work can be done. And in the process of doing work, it is dissipated. We literally create our sense of self by how we choose to invest this psychic energy.
Okay, let's make this really concrete for the listener. Let's think about driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour.
Good example. Very high stakes.
Right. You're passing hundreds of cars, trees are blurring by on the sides, billboards are flashing overhead. There are millions of bits of visual data hitting your retinas every single second.
But you're not processing all of it.
Exactly. Your attention is filtering almost all of it out, so you don't get completely overwhelmed.
You're just watching the lane markers in the cars right next to you.
Right. Then suddenly, a car 3 lengths ahead of you abruptly swerves into your lane.
Panic time.
In a fraction of a second, your attention completely pivots. You filter out the radio playing, you filter out the trees, and you focus entirely on that one anomaly.
You pull all your psychic energy into that one spot.
Yes. You retrieve memories of how cars behave, you evaluate the trajectory of the danger, and you react. You slam the brakes, or you jerk the steering wheel to change lanes.
All in less than a second.
All of that requires a massive, instantaneous reallocation of psychic energy.
And you were able to do that because your attention was organized around a very clear goal. Survival.
Right, the ultimate goal.
But here is where the problem lies for most of us in daily life. The default state of our consciousness, when we aren't actively directing our attention toward a specific, demanding goal like that, is a state the author calls psychic entropy.
Psychic entropy. Entropy, like in the second law of thermodynamics.
Exactly like that.
The physical tendency of all systems to move toward disorder and chaos over time.
Yes, but applied to the mind. In the realm of the mind, psychic entropy is information that conflicts with our existing intentions, or just distracts us from our goals.
Well, it's mental chaos.
Right. We experience this internal disorder subjectively as pain, fear, rage, or anxiety. Left to its own devices, with no external demands placed upon it, the human mind naturally drifts towards psychic entropy.
It wanders toward our worries.
Exactly. It looks for problems.
Oh, man, this is exactly what happens when you wake up at 3 a.m., isn't it?
The dreaded 3 a.m. wake-up, yes.
The room is pitch dark. There are absolutely no external demands. Your attention has nothing to anchor onto, and suddenly your mind just starts spiraling out of control.
It feeds on itself.
You start thinking about an awkward conversation you had 5 years ago, or you start stressing about an email you haven't even written yet for work tomorrow. That's psychic entropy in real time, right? The chaos just rushes in to fill the void.
That is the perfect everyday example of psychic entropy, and it explains why people are so deeply uncomfortable with being alone with their own thoughts.
You can't
Who
stand.
really can't. To stave off that entropy, we constantly seek out external information to force order onto our minds.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
If attention is this strictly finite resource, right, this precious psychic energy that we only have 185 billion bits of, isn't something like mindlessly watching television or doom scrolling on social media actually a great way to save it?
Save the energy, you mean?
Yeah. Like you come home from a grueling day at work, you're mentally exhausted, so you just veg out on the couch to conserve your 126 bits per second. Shouldn't that make us feel better?
This raises a tremendously important question, and honestly, it's a trap almost everyone falls into today.
I know I do.
The data from the book's studies addresses this directly, and the findings might surprise you. It is entirely true that television or endless scrolling requires minimal directed attention.
It's very low effort.
But, crucially, it does not actually organize the mind.
It doesn't.
No. Instead, it induces a state of apathy. Because there is no real goal, no challenge, and absolutely no skill required to watch a sitcom or swipe a screen, it fails to order your consciousness effectively.
So what is it doing
It
then?
merely provides a very low-level, temporary mask over the entropy. The moment you turn the screen off, the 3 a.m. anxiety rushes right back in.
Oh, wow. So it's not resting the mind at all. It's just putting it in a holding pattern.
Exactly. It's a pause button, not a reset button. Active engagement, on the other hand, like reading a challenging piece of literature or working on a complex hobby or maybe playing an instrument, that requires you to utilize and spend your psychic energy.
You have to burn the fuel.
Yes. But it does so in a way that creates lasting order in consciousness. When your psychic energy is invested in realistic goals and your personal skills match the opportunities for action, you experience profound order.
And that order is what we're looking for.
Yes, this highly ordered state of consciousness is what Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. And unlike the apathy of television, flow actually builds a more complex, resilient self over time.
So to avoid this default state of psychic entropy, this modern malaise of low-grade anxiety and boredom we started talking about, we have to actively organize our consciousness.
We have to be the architects of our attention.
And the book makes a really sharp distinction here. It says we have to stop seeking basic pleasure and start seeking enjoyment.
Yes, that distinction is paramount.
What's the difference, though? Because in everyday language, we use those two words completely interchangeably. Pleasure, enjoyment, it's all the same in casual conversation.
The psychological distinction between pleasure and enjoyment is vital to understanding the flow state.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Pleasure is simply a feeling of contentment that happens when biological or social expectations have been met.
Like eating when you're hungry.
Exactly. Eating a heavy meal when you are hungry, resting in a warm bed when you are tired, or consuming passive entertainment.
Those feel good.
They do feel good, and pleasure is an important restorative component of life, certainly. We need it. But it does not lead to psychological growth. It merely restores balance.
It just gets you back to baseline.
Precisely. Enjoyment, however, is characterized by forward movement. It requires novelty, a sense of accomplishment, and an active stretching of your physical or mental limits.
So enjoyment takes work.
It takes work. And the interesting thing is that you might not even feel what we classically call pleasure while you're in the middle of an enjoyable activity.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, think about a mountain climber halfway up a massive cliff face.
Okay, yeah.
In that moment, they might be freezing, Their muscles might be screaming in pain. They might be terrified they're going to fall. In that exact specific moment, they are definitely not experiencing pleasure.
They're probably miserable in the physical sense.
Right. But afterward, looking back, they describe it as one of the best experiences of their entire life.
Because they conquered it.
Because through that enjoyable flow-producing activity, they realize their self has grown. They stretch their limits, and they've become more complex.
Okay, so how do we actually construct this enjoyment? How do we deliberately build a flow state instead of just sort of stumbling into it accidentally on a good day?
Well, this is where the framework comes in.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. The book outlines 8 specific components of the flow experience. And I want to be careful here not to just rattle these off like a grocery list because they all interlock so beautifully.
They feed into one another.
They do. So let's start with the foundation. The book says flow primarily happens when we confront tasks we actually have a chance of completing. It is all about this delicate balance between the challenges of the environment and our own internal skills.
Yes, the balance of challenge and skill is the absolute engine of flow. The author illustrates this with a great conceptual diagram of a young boy, let's just call him Alex, who is just learning to play tennis for the very first time.
Okay, so Alex is a total beginner.
Right. Now, when Alex first steps onto the court, his skills are virtually zero. He doesn't know how to hold the racket. He doesn't know the footwork. He doesn't know the rules.
He's starting from scratch.
So the simple act of just hitting the ball over the net one single time is a significant challenge for him.
It's a huge victory.
Exactly. Because that relatively low challenge perfectly matches his relatively low skill level, Alex enters the flow state. He is fully engaged, and he is enjoying himself immensely.
But he can't stay there forever, right? I mean, if he practices every day for a month, just hitting the ball over the net becomes easy. His skill level rises.
Precisely. His skills outgrow the challenge. And if he keeps just standing there, lobbing the ball over the net with no new challenge, the activity is now too low for his newly developed skill level.
And what happens then?
The result: he falls out of flow and drops straight into boredom.
So to fix the boredom, he needs to raise the challenge. He needs to do something harder.
Right. But what if, to fix the boredom, he suddenly signs up for a tournament and has to play against a regional state champion?
Oh, that would be a disaster.
Then the pendulum swings entirely in the other direction. The challenge of returning a 90-mile-per-hour serve is completely overwhelming compared to his beginner skills.
And the result there is just pure anxiety.
Coal anxiety.
So flow is this really narrow channel right between the crushing weight of anxiety on one side and the numbing apathy of boredom on the other.
Exactly. It's a tightrope.
To stay in the flow channel, Alex has to continually, dynamically match his rising skills with slightly rising challenges. He has to find opponents who are just a tiny bit better than he is, forcing him to stretch, but not so much better that they absolutely destroy his confidence.
Yes. And this constant upward adjustment of challenge and skill is the very mechanism that forces the self to grow and become more complex over time. You literally build yourself by staying in that channel.
That makes perfect sense. And when you perfectly match that challenge to your skill, it naturally triggers the next component of flow, right? Which is deep, absolute concentration.
Yes. The concentration we're talking about here is almost superhuman.
You brought up the case study of Edwin Moses earlier, the legendary Olympic hurdler who went completely undefeated for nearly a decade.
Yes, the Moses example is profound for this.
It really is.
Moses described his mental state right before a massive Olympic race. He explained that to perform at that elite level of flow, he had to completely erase the existence of everything outside the actual track.
Erase everything.
Everything. He had to obliterate the memory of his jet lag, the bad hotel food he ate that morning, any personal or financial problems he was having back home, and even the existence of the world-class opponents standing in the lanes right next to him.
Just block them completely out.
His mind had to become an absolute silent void of everything except the physical reality of the hurdles and his own body.
But how does someone achieve that kind of laser focus? I mean, I get distracted if my phone buzzes in the other room, you know? How do you lock your attention in so deeply that you can ignore Olympic-level pressure?
You can only achieve that level of intense concentration if the activity provides the next two elements of flow.
Which are?
Clear goals and immediate feedback.
Ah, okay.
Think about our everyday mundane lives.
Yeah.
Our goals are often incredibly murky, and the feedback is agonizingly slow.
Oh, totally. Think about a standard corporate job. Your goal might be something like improve synergy across departments, which is incredibly vague.
What does that even mean?
Exactly. And you might not know if you are actually doing a good job until an annual performance review like 6 months later.
That ambiguity breeds psychic entropy. It creates so much space for doubt and anxiety to creep in.
But in a flow activity, the rules of engagement are crystal clear, like a rock climber.
Yes, the rock climber is the perfect example.
The goal for a free solo rock climber couldn't possibly be any clearer. Don't fall. Reach the top of the pitch. That's it.
It's binary. You succeed or you fail.
And the feedback isn't 6 months away. It is literally second by second, millimeter by millimeter. Every single time that climber shifts their weight or reaches for a handhold, the rock tells them immediately and objectively if they are perfectly stable or if they are slipping.
They don't have to guess.
Right. They don't have to wait for a committee to review their grip.
And because those goals are absolutely clear and the feedback is instantaneous, your brain doesn't have to waste any of those precious 126 bits per second on second guessing or worrying.
It frees up all your psychic energy.
Yes. Which leads seamlessly into the next element, effortless involvement.
Your effortless involvement.
Because you are so locked in, all the lingering worries, all the little frustrations of everyday life are completely and seamlessly removed from your awareness. The psychic energy is entirely consumed by the interaction with the rock or the tennis racket or the music you're playing.
Which brings up a fascinating point about control, because the next element is a sense of control. But when I was reading this section, it felt like a massive paradox to me.
How so?
Because in activities that produce the deepest flow, like extreme rock climbing or deep sea diving or racing cars, you are actually in a tremendous amount of physical danger.
Objectively, yes.
The environment is objectively hostile. So how can you feel a sense of control when you could literally die if the wind shifts?
It is a brilliant paradox, and Csikszentmihalyi clarifies this beautifully in the text.
I need this clarified for sure.
What you are experiencing in flow is not the objective reality of having absolute control over the universe, because no one has that.
Right, you can't control the weather.
What you are experiencing is the profound lack of worry about losing control.
Lack of worry.
Consider a professional ballet dancer executing a highly difficult multi-rotational turn on stage.
Okay.
The risk of falling is very real. The physics of the movement are incredibly demanding. But during the flow state, the conscious fear of failure is completely suspended.
They aren't in their head about it.
Exactly. The dancer isn't thinking, what if I fall? They are simply executing. You are exercising control in a situation where the outcome is not guaranteed, and that pushes your skills to the absolute limit.
It makes the feeling of control feel profoundly meaningful precisely because it is hard-won against the threat of chaos.
Exactly. It's earned control.
That makes so much sense. It's the absence of the anxiety of losing control, and that ties right into the next element, which I think is probably the hardest one for modern people to really grasp.
Which is
The loss of self-consciousness. Now, I want to be really careful with how we explain this, because when people hear loss of self, they immediately think of like chemically induced ego death or just obliterating your personality and becoming a zombie.
right. They think of losing their identity entirely.
But that's not what the book is saying at all, is it?
No, not at all. It is not a passive going with the flow in the colloquial, laid-back sense.
Just floating down a river?
Right. It's not that. It is a highly active merging with the activity. Let's use the example of a master violinist during a really complex performance.
Okay, picture the violinist.
To play at that level, she has to be supremely aware of her own body. She has to monitor the microtension in her fingers, the exact pressure of the bow on the strings, the acoustics bouncing off the back wall of the concert hall. Her awareness is turned up to maximum.
So she's intensely self-aware in a physical sense.
Yes. But what she forgets about is her ego, her socially constructed self.
The voice in her head.
Exactly. During the music, she is not wasting any bits of attention worrying about how her hair looks under the stage lights, or whether the critic in the third row thinks she's talented, or if she remembered to pay her electric bill.
She drops all that baggage.
The ego, with all its insecurities and demands, just takes a back seat. And here's the beautiful payoff. Because the ego is temporarily suspended and merged with the music, when the flow experience eventually ends, the self actually emerges stronger.
Stronger. How?
Because it has expanded its boundaries by successfully interacting with something highly complex outside of itself. It proved its competence.
It's like you have to forget who you are to become someone better.
That is exactly it.
And while all of this is happening, while you're merged with the activity, Your perception of reality itself actually warps, specifically the final element, which is the transformation of time.
Yes. In deep flow, clock time becomes completely irrelevant. It gets replaced by the internal rhythm of the activity itself.
We've all felt this, right? You get so deep into a project or maybe a really great conversation or a video game, and you look up and suddenly 4 hours have passed, but it felt like 20 minutes.
Time just flies.
Or, conversely, if you talk to athletes in the zone, a split-second event, like a baseball pitcher releasing a fastball, or a dancer's leap can stretch out in their minds, feeling like it takes agonizing minutes as they process every single micro-movement.
It expands or contracts based on what you need. And when you manage to combine all of these interlocking elements, the match challenge, the clear goals, the immediate feedback, the concentration, the loss of ego, the warp time, you achieve what the author calls an autotelic experience.
Autotelic, let's define that.
The word comes from Greek. Auto meaning self, and telos meaning goal.
Self-goal.
Right. It describes an activity that is entirely self-contained. You do it not for some future external reward like a paycheck or a trophy or social prestige, but simply because the doing of the thing itself is its own reward.
Okay, this is all incredibly compelling. I can easily see how you can extract this autotelic flow from inherently structured, challenging activities like rock climbing, or playing competitive chess, or painting a masterpiece.
Those are the easy examples.
Right, but let's bring this back down to earth for the listener. Most of us do not spend our days scaling cliffs in Yosemite.
No, we don't.
We spend the vast majority of our waking lives doing the 9-to-5 grind, sitting in traffic, doing the laundry, or just sitting alone in our living rooms on a rainy Saturday afternoon.
The mundane reality.
Exactly. How in the world do we apply these grand concepts to a mundane, everyday reality of modern life?
That is the ultimate challenge posed by the book.
Yeah.
And to answer it, we have to examine what the author calls the paradox of work.
The paradox of work. Okay.
To study this, Csikszentmihalyi and his research team utilized something called the experience sampling method.
Experience sampling. How did they do that?
Well, because human memory is faulty. I mean, we often completely misremember how we felt during the week. The researchers gave thousands of subjects across different demographics electronic pagers.
Oh, like old school beepers?
Yes, and these pagers were programmed to beep randomly throughout the day and night. Whenever the pager beeped, the subject had to immediately pull out a booklet and record exactly what they were doing right at that second.
Catch them in the act.
Exactly. And they had to rate their psychological state on various metrics: how focused they were, how challenged they felt, how happy they were.
Which gives you a real-time, objective map of human consciousness across thousands of hours. That's brilliant.
It is brilliant data.
Yeah.
And when they compiled all this massive data, it revealed a stunning, deeply counterintuitive finding.
What did they find?
They found that people reported experiencing the psychological state of flow about 4 times as often at work as they did during their leisure time at home.
Wait, let me make absolutely sure I'm hearing this right.
I know, it sounds crazy.
People are objectively in a state of flow, feeling strong, highly focused, appropriately challenged, and creative 4 times more often while they are on the clock at their jobs than when they are at home lounging on the couch watching TV.
Yes, 4 times as often.
That is wild.
But if you think about the 8 elements we just discussed, it actually makes perfect logical sense. Jobs, by their very nature, are built like games.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
They inherently have clear goals. Finish this report, build this engine, hit this quota.
Right.
They provide immediate feedback. The boss approves the report. The engine starts up. And they provide rules and challenges that demand concentration. Leisure time, like watching TV, has none of those built-in structures.
There are no goals in watching Netflix.
Exactly. So work provides flow much more reliably.
Right.
But here is the tragic paradox of the whole thing.
What's the tragedy?
Despite the data showing that people felt significantly better, stronger, and more satisfied while working, those exact same people invariably reported on those surveys that they would rather be at leisure than at work.
Why? That makes absolutely no sense.
It really doesn't.
If work is making you feel psychologically robust and engaged, and sitting on the couch is making you feel apathetic and anxious, why would you actively wish to leave the work to go sit on the couch?
It comes down to deep-seated cultural conditioning.
How so?
From the time we are children, we are taught by society that work is an imposition. It is a necessary evil, a burden we must endure to survive, and that free time doing nothing is the ultimate good.
Wow, yeah. Work is the punishment, the weekend is the reward.
Exactly.
Right.
We view work as something we are forced to do for someone else's benefit. So even when a work task puts us into a state of beautiful flow and makes us feel great, we cognitively reject the experience.
We fight it.
We resent it
Mhm.
simply because we feel we have to do it. It is a tragic cognitive dissonance that literally robs us of thousands of hours of potential happiness.
That is heartbreaking. We are literally tricking ourselves into being miserable at work, even when the work is good for us.
No.
But the book says we can break this conditioning, right? We can become what it calls an autotelic worker.
Yes, and this is where it gets really inspiring. The autotelic worker is someone who takes a job, even the most mundane, repetitive job imaginable, and internally restructures it into a flow activity.
They hack the job.
Exactly. They don't wait for the boss to make it interesting. They take ownership of their own psychic energy.
The book gives some incredible, vivid examples of this. My absolute favorite was the story of Rico, a welder on an assembly line.
Oh, Rico's story is legendary in this context.
It's so good. So this guy, Rico, has been doing the exact same highly repetitive mechanical task for years. I mean, most people would be bored out of their absolute minds, driven to complete psychic entropy by the monotony, the noise, the repetition, the heat.
It's a recipe for misery for most.
But Rico didn't surrender to boredom. He turned his job into a private, high-stakes Olympic event.
How did he do it?
He timed his own movements to the fraction of a second. He was constantly analyzing his own physical mechanics, trying to beat his own personal record by finding tiny micro-efficiencies in how he reached for a tool or applied a weld.
He gamified it.
Totally. He didn't care about the company's quota. He didn't care about pleasing the manager. He cared about his own internal mastery. He found absolute flow and joy on a dusty, loud assembly line.
It is a remarkable story. And the text pairs that modern example with an ancient one, which I love. The story of Lord Wenhu's cook from Chinese philosophy.
Oh, tell me about the cook.
So this cook found an absolute state of Zen ecstasy just by carving up an ox. Now, butcher work is messy, hard labor, but why did he enjoy it? Because he didn't just hack away at the meat blindly.
He paid attention.
He paid such microscopic, intense attention to the anatomy of the animal, the exact space between the joints, the natural grain of the muscle, that his knife moved flawlessly, never dulling, never catching on a bone.
Wow.
He elevated a messy, bloody chore into an exquisite art form simply by how he directed his attention.
It's all about recognizing hidden opportunities for action and skill building, where everyone else only sees constraints and drudgery.
Exactly.
And it's not just manual labor either. I loved the example of Professor Mario Leibniz.
Ah, yes. The brilliant physicist.
Yeah, he was this famous physicist, but because of his academic position, he constantly had to sit through incredibly boring, bureaucratic academic conferences.
We've all been in those meetings.
Oh, they're the worst. He couldn't just get up and leave, but his mind was far too fast for the slow pace of the speakers. He was at massive risk of severe boredom and entropy.
So what was his solution?
He invented a microflow activity for himself.
Microflow.
Under the desk, totally out of sight, he would tap his fingers together in highly complex mathematical patterns. He would create these intricate physical sequences with his hands.
That's hilarious and brilliant.
Right. It provided just enough of a mental and physical challenge to keep his excess psychic energy ordered, staving off the entropy, but it was automated enough that he could still pay attention if the speaker actually happened to say something interesting. He literally engineered a hack for his own consciousness.
If we pull back and look at the bigger picture here, what Rico the welder, the ancient cook, and the physicist all teach us is that any job, any situation, can be restructured to provide flow.
Any situation at all.
You just have to set clear micro goals, measure your own progress, and continually raise the challenge for yourself, regardless of what the external world is asking of you.
But work is only half the equation of our lives, right? The other half is what we do when we are alone. And Csikszentmihalyi warns that unstructured solitude is actually one of the most dangerous states for the human mind.
It is extremely dangerous.
Dangerous because of that psychic entropy we talked about earlier, the 3 a.m. doom spiral.
Exactly. When you are at work, the environment provides structure.
Right.
When you are talking to a friend, the conversation provides structure. But when you are entirely alone, with absolutely no external stimulation to guide your attention, the mind defaults to chaos. It collapses in on itself.
Just spirals downward.
The worries about your health, your aging parents, your finances, your past mistakes, they all rush in to fill the vacuum.
This is exactly why people feel a sudden spike of panic when their phone dies in a waiting room.
Oh, absolutely.
They are suddenly left completely alone with their own thoughts for 10 minutes, and they don't know how to order their own minds without a digital crutch.
Therefore, the ultimate test of your ability to control your experience is what you do in solitude.
That's the real test.
When it is a rainy Sunday afternoon and you have absolutely nothing scheduled, what do? Do you kill time with passive entertainment, doom scrolling, or substance abuse just to desperately keep the mind from unraveling?
Just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right. Or do you possess the internal discipline to take on activities that require concentration like reading, writing, gardening, or painting activities that actually build the self?
That is a brilliant diagnostic question for anyone listening right now to ask themselves, what do you do on a blank Sunday?
It tells you everything you need to know about your psychic energy.
And it applies to our social interactions, too. We often think of flow as this solitary thing you do while painting or climbing, but you can bring flow to a social gathering.
You definitely can.
Think about walking into a crowded party where you don't know many people. The default state for most of us is ego-driven anxiety.
Look, okay, does anyone want to talk to me?
Exactly. What if I say something stupid? That is all inward-facing psychic entropy. But the book suggests you can turn that interaction into a flow state by shifting your attention entirely away from yourself and onto the action system of the other person.
You make them the puzzle.
Yes. You observe them. You actively listen to what they are saying instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. You try to figure out what they are passionate about, and you adapt your responses to their feedback. You turn the conversation into a collaborative, improvised game of discovery.
It changes everything about the dynamic.
It makes me think of everyday life as a massive, heavy piece of raw marble sitting right in your living room. You can just let it sit there, let it gather dust, and complain about how much space it takes up, which is the equivalent of living in boredom and apathy.
Just letting it weigh you down.
Right. Or you can pick up a chisel and actively, intentionally chip away at it to create a sculpture. You are the one who has to bring the flow, whether that raw marble is a boring spreadsheet at the office, an awkward chat with a stranger at a party, or a painfully quiet evening alone in your house.
That analogy perfectly captures the essence of what Csikszentmihalyi calls the autotelic self.
The autotelic self.
An autotelic person does not sit around waiting for the world to provide enjoyment because they know the world is indifferent.
The universe doesn't care.
Exactly. Instead, they manufacture enjoyment out of whatever raw material is at hand. And this concept becomes most crucial and frankly most poignant when we step out of the realm of everyday annoyances and into the realm of true tragedy.
Yeah, this is where it gets really serious.
Because it's one thing to find flow in a boring meeting, but how does this model survive genuine, life-shattering adversity?
Yeah, I have to admit, when I got to this part of the reading, I was a bit skeptical.
Understandably so.
I wanted to push back. I thought, okay, what does this all mean when things go truly dark? Are we basically saying that a person should just think happy thoughts when they get laid off from their career of 20 years, or when they get diagnosed with a terrible illness, or when they lose a loved one? Is this entire philosophy just a highly academic, fancy version of toxic positivity?
That is a very valid concern, but the answer is absolutely not.
Okay, good.
The autotelic self has nothing to do with passive acceptance or delusional optimism or forcing a smile while your life burns down. It is about something much more fierce than that.
Fierce. I like that.
It is about aggressively seizing control of your psychic energy precisely when your external world falls apart. The autotelic self translates potential threats into enjoyable challenges out of sheer survival instinct.
Survival by flow.
Yes. The author cites the work of Richard Logan, who studied the psychology of survivors of extreme, harrowing situations. He looked at people like Admiral Richard Byrd.
The polar explorer.
Right. He was trapped entirely alone in a freezing, dark, tiny hut in the Antarctic for months during a brutally harsh winter. Or Charles Lindbergh, fighting off severe sleep deprivation and terrifying hallucinations while flying completely solo over the Atlantic Ocean in a tin can of an airplane.
And the example that absolutely blew my mind was Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Soviet gulags.
Oh, that is the ultimate example.
I mean, paint the picture of this for a second. He is stripped of his humanity, standing in the freezing cold mud of a Siberian prison camp. He is surrounded by armed guards, vicious dogs, and barbed wire. He is starving. His external reality is a literal hell.
Absolute worst-case scenario for a human being.
And what does he do? He doesn't just endure it. He takes his consciousness and builds a fortress. He starts writing complex poetry in his head.
In his head.
Yes. He memorizes thousands of lines by using broken matchsticks to keep rhythm. He turned his internal consciousness into a vibrant, ordered world that the Soviet guards couldn't touch, couldn't see, and couldn't destroy. He created flow out of pure terror and deprivation.
It is a testament to the absolute indomitability of the human spirit when attention is wielded correctly. Survivors like Solzhenitsyn, Bird, and Lindbergh didn't survive by hoping for rescue.
They didn't wait around.
They survived by doing exactly what the flow model predicts, but under extreme duress. First, they paid microscopic, unyielding attention to their immediate environment.
Hyperfocus.
When your grand life goals are frustrated or destroyed by a disaster, you cannot afford to live in the past. You have to find new, hidden opportunities for action in the present, no matter how small or seemingly pathetic they are.
Like matching pieces of wood in a cell.
Yes. Second, they set entirely new goals that were appropriate to their newly constrained reality, and they monitored their feedback relentlessly. They established a new game they could actually play and win, even if the game was just memorize one more line of poetry today.
The book actually breaks down this process of cheating chaos into 3 specific, actionable steps for transforming massive stress into flow.
What are the 3 steps?
First is unself-conscious self-assurance.
Unself-conscious self-assurance.
Yeah. This means you trust your fundamental ability to handle whatever comes your way, but you aren't driven by your ego. You know you can figure it out, but you aren't obsessing over how unfair it is that this happened to you.
You drop the victim mentality.
Exactly. Second is focusing attention on the world. You deliberately shift your precious psychic energy away from your own inner turmoil, away from the self-pity, and you redirect it outward toward the objective facts of your environment.
And we must emphasize how absolutely vital that second step is.
Yeah. Let's use a more everyday disaster as an example, just to ground it. Imagine you are driving to the most important job interview of your life, and your car breaks down on a deserted highway.
Terrible timing.
Right. If you just sit there behind the wheel, pounding the dashboard, raging about how unfair life is, how the universe hates you, and how your entire career is now ruined, your attention is focused entirely inward on your ego.
You are drowning in psychic entropy.
You are totally paralyzed. But if you can force yourself to shift your attention to the world, to the engine, to the specific sounds the car was making before it died, to the physical reality of the tools in your trunk, to your surroundings, you suddenly become part of the system.
You stop being a passive victim of a tragedy, and you become an active participant in a puzzle.
Which leads perfectly into the third step, the discovery of new solutions. Once your attention is open and focused on the environment rather than your bruised ego, you might realize you can't fix the car. The original goal driving to the interview is dead.
It's gone.
But because you are observing the environment, you find a completely different path. You realize you have a phone, you see a mile marker, you can call for a tow, and you can call the interviewer to conduct the meeting over the phone while sitting on the guardrail.
You pivot.
Yes. You remain fiercely open to alternative goals when your original goal is blocked. It's about aggressively finding the highest possible challenge you can tackle within your new, highly constrained reality.
Exactly. So up to this point in our deep dive, we have mapped out the micromechanics.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We've explored how to find flow in hobbies, in the workplace, in social relationships, and even in the depths of severe adversity. But there is a final, vital piece to this puzzle.
The grand finale.
Because a life that is merely full of disconnected flow activities, a great game of tennis on Tuesday, a deep conversation on Thursday, a focused hour of work on Friday, is still fundamentally fragmented.
It's just a bunch of good moments.
Right. It is a collection of good moments, but it might lack a cohesive shape. To achieve true, lasting, optimal experience, we have to look at the final, grand step in the control of consciousness.
Which is making meaning, taking all those fragmented pieces and turning the entirety of your life into one single, unified flow activity.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this requires what Csikszentmihalyi calls a life theme.
A life theme.
A life theme is a grand, overarching goal from which all your other smaller goals logically follow. It is the North Star that provides constant, unwavering purpose.
So it guides everything else.
Yes. If you have deeply integrated a life theme, Every single action you take, whether it is a major risky career move or just the quiet act of washing the dishes in the evening, makes sense within the context of that ultimate lifelong goal. Your consciousness is entirely streamlined.
The book outlines 3 components to building this kind of structural meaning. Let's walk through them.
That's good.
First is cultivating purpose. You have to set a challenging, lifelong goal that acts like a massive magnetic field, aligning all the scattered iron filings of your psychic energy into one unified direction.
A magnetic field is a great way to vocalize it.
And the book makes a really provocative observation here. It says this overarching purpose doesn't objectively have to be good in a traditional moral sense in order for it to successfully organize a person's mind.
Wait, really? It doesn't have to be moral?
No. For example, Napoleon Bonaparte's life theme was the pursuit of absolute power and the violent conquest of Europe. That purpose unified his consciousness perfectly. He was undoubtedly in a state of high flow for years, even as his actions caused immense suffering and destruction.
Oh, wow.
Right. On the complete opposite end of the moral spectrum, you have someone like Mother Teresa. Her life theme was unconditional love, self-sacrifice, and helping the absolute most destitute and helpless people on earth. Her purpose unified her consciousness beautifully through profound compassion.
Two total opposites, but both found flow.
Exactly. The psychological takeaway isn't about judging the morality of the goal. It's recognizing that having a singular unifying purpose is what rescues the human mind from the chaos of entropy. It gives the mind a definitive vector.
That is a crucial distinction. The psychology of meaning is structurally neutral. It is the content we choose that carries the moral weight.
Right. Once you have that purpose, the second component is forging resolve.
Forging resolve.
This describes the dynamic mutual relationship between your goals and your effort. When you first set a grand goal, the goal itself justifies the intense effort and sacrifice you have to put in. But over time, a fascinating inversion happens.
What's the inversion?
The relentless effort, the sweat, the tears you expend day after day actually begins to justify the goal. The goal becomes infinitely more valuable to you precisely because you have invested so much of your own irreplaceable psychic energy, so much of yourself into it.
You literally build the value of the goal through your own sweat equity.
Yes. And that brings us to the third and final component of meaning recovering harmony.
Recovering harmony.
When you have a clear magnetic purpose and you apply unyielding resolve to pursue it over time, the ultimate result is profound inner congruence. Your internal thoughts, your emotional feelings, and your external physical actions are all perfectly aligned.
No more friction.
Exactly. You eradicate that lingering psychic entropy, the self-doubt, the late-night regret, the existential ontological dread we talked about at the very beginning. You strip away the friction of second-guessing yourself. You just are. You exist purely in the action.
To map out how a human being actually reaches this state of harmony over a lifetime, the author breaks down the evolution of this meaning system into what he calls the dialectic of the self.
Let's pause and define dialectic for a second, just so we are all on the same page.
Sure.
A dialectic is basically an intellectual or historical conversation between two opposing forces. You have a starting point, a thesis. Then you encounter an opposing force, an antithesis. And the tension between those two opposing ideas eventually resolves into a synthesis, which is a new, higher, more complex state. It's a spiral of growth driven by conflict.
That is an excellent, clear definition. And Csikszentmihalyi applies this dialectical spiral to the development of human consciousness.
How does the spiral start?
Well, we all start out at the lowest level, focusing entirely on the self. As infants and young people, our primary drive is seeking basic biological pleasure, comfort, and survival. This is the thesis.
Pure selfishness, basically.
Right. But eventually, living purely for oneself becomes empty or creates conflict with others. So the dialectic swings outward to the antithesis. We focus on the community.
We join the tribe.
We seek belonging. We conform to group values. We find our identity in our family, our religion, or our nation. We subordinate our individual desires to the needs of the group.
But eventually, for a truly developing mind, just conforming to the group isn't enough either. It feels stifling. You realize you are losing your individuality.
So the pendulum swings back.
It swings back toward the self again, right? But this time it's at a higher level on the spiral. We move into self-actualization. We push our individual limits. We develop unique skills. We try to discover what makes us distinctly different from everyone else in the tribe.
Yes, the return to the self is vital for building complexity. But the ultimate stage, The highest level of psychological evolution described in the flow model is when we take that highly developed, fiercely unique, actualized self, and we merge it with a system larger than ourselves.
A transcendent cause.
We integrate our unique individuality with the cosmos, so to speak. We use our highest individual skills to serve humanity, or to explore the universe, or to create enduring art. The self and the other are no longer in conflict. They are synthesized into a unified flow.
It is honestly just incredible to pull back and marvel at this entire progression.
It's breathtaking.
Because when you first pick up a book with a title like Flow, you think it's just going to be about how to focus better at work or how to play a better game of tennis.
A productivity act.
Right. Flow starts as this almost trivial thing, a simple mental game you play to beat boredom on a slow Tuesday afternoon. But as you follow the mechanics of it, as you commit to constantly seeking higher challenges to match your ever-growing skills, you realize it is so much more.
It's the mechanism of growth.
This mechanism of flow is eventually revealed to be the very engine of human evolution. It is the precise mechanism that pushes individual humans, and by extension entire cultures and civilizations, toward greater and greater complexity. We don't grow because it's easy. We grow because confronting chaos with ordered attention is the only way to find true joy.
And that ultimately is the true psychology of optimal experience. It is not a philosophy of escaping reality.
No?
It is not about hiding from the pain of the world. It is about engaging with reality so deeply, so courageously, and with such fiercely focused attention that you literally transform the raw chaos of the universe into beautiful order. And in doing so, you transform yourself in the process.
So I want to leave you with a challenge today. The next time you find yourself stuck in agonizing gridlock traffic, or you are sitting there bored out of your mind in a pointless corporate meeting, or, more importantly, when you are facing a massive, heartbreaking setback that makes you want to give up entirely, I want you to pause.
Just stop and breathe.
Take a breath, look at your environment, and ask yourself, where is the hidden game here? What is the specific challenge hiding in this terrible moment? And what specific skill can I stretch to meet it?
Find the flow channel.
Because the exact moment you find that challenge, the moment you consciously direct your finite psychic energy with clear purpose, you instantly stop being a helpless victim of your circumstances and you become the active architect of your reality.
Well said.
If you found value in this deep dive, if this conversation sparked something in you, please make sure to hit that subscribe button for the Decode Deep Dive channel so you never miss an exploration like this.
And drop a comment below.
Yes, drop a comment. Share your own microflow habits. How do you beat the doldrums of the day? Do you tap your fingers like the physicist? Do you count the tiles on the floor? Let us know.
We want to hear about it.
And most importantly, go buy Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. We have only scratched the surface today, and you need to experience the full, magnificent depth of this life-changing material for yourself.
Highly recommend picking it up.
Remember, your 185 billion bits of attention are steadily ticking away second by second. Invest them wisely. We will see you next time.